Emerging from the vast, dark expanse of the Pacific, Iwo Jima stood as a jagged sentinel of volcanic stone. Its shores were unforgiving, where the relentless sea crashed against sharp, black rocks, hinting at the struggle to come. By 1945, this tiny speck of land became the most strategic point in the Pacific, the final gateway to Tokyo. Across the ocean, the American industrial machine was working at a fever pitch, preparing for an unprecedented amphibious assault. Thousands of ships and planes were forged in the heat of necessity, destined for the sulfurous sands of the island. The logistical scale was staggering, representing the collective will of a nation determined to end the global conflict. Steel, fuel, and manpower were funneled toward the Pacific, converging on a target that few had ever heard of. On the decks of the fleet, young sailors and Marines checked their gear, their faces etched with quiet contemplation. They were the tip of the spear, trained for a battle they knew would be unlike anything they had faced. Every lifebelt, every canteen, and every round of ammunition was a lifeline in the coming storm. The fleet moved in silence, a massive armada stretching across the horizon, carrying the weight of history. Above them, the sky remained vast and empty, a deceptive peace before the planned naval bombardment. As they neared the island, the looming silhouette of Mount Suribachi began to dominate the view. It was an ancient volcano, cold and gray, watching the approaching ships with a silent, ominous presence. The strategic origins of the battle were set. The stage was now ready for one of history's bloodiest acts. Beneath the surface of that volcanic rock, General Kuribayashi was executing a defensive plan of terrifying ingenuity. He discarded the traditional beach defense, choosing instead to turn the entire island into a subterranean fortress. His blueprints detailed a world of shadow, where 11 miles of tunnels would hide his 20,000 troops. The Japanese soldiers vanished into the earth, creating a labyrinth that would defy the heavy naval guns. Inside, the air was hot and sulfurous, a claustrophobic environment where the flickering lanterns provided the only light. The tunnels connected bunkers, hospitals, and command centers, all buried deep beneath the reach of bombs. Every corridor was a potential ambush point, designed to lure the invaders into a meat grinder of hidden fire. The heat was oppressive, reaching over 100 degrees, making every movement a test of endurance. Communication lines were strung along the ceiling, linking the scattered units into a single, cohesive defensive web. This was the honeycomb defense, an invisible trap that turned the island itself into a weapon. Soldiers worked around the clock, hand-digging through the tough volcanic ash with picks and shovels. Exhaustion was a constant companion, but the order was clear: fight to the last man to defend the homeland. They carved out pillboxes that were nearly invisible from the surface, blending perfectly with the landscape. Massive artillery pieces were dragged into deep caves, their barrels hidden until the moment they would strike. The entire island was gridded, with every landing zone pre-targeted by these hidden batteries. To the Marines offshore, the island appeared dead, a silent wasteland of ash and smoke. But beneath that ash, the Japanese were waiting, their fingers on the triggers of thousands of weapons. They were prepared to die, but more importantly, they were prepared to make the cost of victory unbearable. The stage was set, the underground network complete. The hunters were now the prey in their own land. On February 19, 1945, the silence was shattered as the horizon filled with the steel of the U.S. Navy. A massive naval bombardment began, a hurricane of fire designed to soften the island's defenses. Shells the size of cars rained down, turning the volcanic ash into a landscape of erupting geysers. From the air, it seemed nothing could survive the onslaught, as the island was swallowed by smoke. But the Japanese remained safe in their tunnels, waiting for the smoke to clear and the Marines to land. In the Higgins boats, the Marines sat in grim silence, the roar of the engines drowning out their thoughts. They watched the island draw closer, a dark, smoking specter that seemed to grow larger with every wave. Their faces were masks of determination and fear, the young men ready to do the impossible. The landing crafts hit the shore with a jarring thud, the ramps dropping into the volcanic surf. Boots hit the black volcanic ash, and the struggle began immediately as the ground gave way. It was like running through coffee grounds. Every step forward was met with a slide backward. The beach was soon congested with men, vehicles, and supplies, all bogged down in the shifting earth. Then, the Japanese opened fire. From hidden positions across the island, a storm of lead descended. The crossfire was lethal, coming from Mount Suribachi and the high ground to the north. Marines dove for cover where none existed, the black ash their only protection against the onslaught. The air was thick with the scent of sulfur and cordite, the sound of the battle deafening and relentless. Every yard of the beach was a kill zone, as the Japanese artillery found their pre-targeted marks. Medics moved through the chaos, their red crosses a beacon of hope in the middle of the hellfire. The first day was a trial by fire, a brutal introduction to the true price of the island. By nightfall, thousands were dead or wounded, and the Marines held only a sliver of the black sand. The battle for Iwo Jima had truly begun, and the world was watching in horrified silence. The following days were a slow, agonizing crawl through a landscape of death and destruction. They were pinned down by snipers and machine guns, forced to fight for every bunker and every cave. The objective was clear: take the high ground, take Mount Suribachi, and break the Japanese spirit. The ascent was brutal. Soldiers used their hands and knees to climb the jagged volcanic rock under fire. Every rock could hide an enemy, every shadow was a potential threat in the unforgiving terrain. They moved in small groups, covering each other as they advanced upward toward the summit. Casualties were heavy, but the determination to reach the top was stronger than the fear of death. Finally, on the fourth day, a small patrol reached the peak. The world was about to see a legend. In a moment captured forever, the American flag was raised over Mount Suribachi, a symbol of hope. The cheers from the ships below were heard across the island, but the battle was far from over. The fight moved to the north, into the meat grinder, where the terrain was even more treacherous. They had to clean out the tunnels one by one, using flamethrowers and grenades to clear the caves. It was a war of shadows, where the enemy could appear from anywhere and vanish just as quickly. The grinding nature of the siege tested every man's sanity and strength as the days turned into weeks. Night was the most dangerous time, when the Japanese would launch banzai attacks under the cover of darkness. Hand-to-hand combat became a grim reality in the narrow confines of the northern ridges. But the Marines pushed on, fueled by a brotherhood forged in the fires of the most intense combat. By the end of the 36-day battle, the island was finally declared secure, but at a terrible price. Nearly 7,000 Americans and almost all of the 22,000 Japanese defenders were dead. The island was a wasteland of steel and bone, a testament to the sheer brutality of modern warfare. The scars of the battle would never truly heal, etched into the very rock of Iwo Jima. As the survivors left, they looked back at the island, a place that had claimed so much of their youth. The legacy of Iwo Jima would live on, a story of uncommon valor and the true price of war. Decades later, the island remains a place of pilgrimage, a sacred ground for both nations. The rust of the tanks and the cold of the tunnels serve as silent reminders of the courage shown here. The black ash that once drank the blood of thousands is now covered in the green of new growth. But the memory of the fallen remains vivid, a flame that will never be extinguished. We honor their sacrifice by remembering their names and the cause for which they fought. The Battle of Iwo Jima was a defining moment in history, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. As the waves continue to wash against its shores, the story of Iwo Jima will be told for generations. Freedom is never free, it is bought with the courage of those willing to stand in the face of the storm. May we never forget the price that was paid, and the peace that was won on this small volcanic island. In the words of Admiral Nimitz, among the men who fought on Iwo Jima, uncommon valor was a common virtue.